Well done. Mr. agrees. Hello and welcome back. My name is Sean and today we're going to be talking about The Beginning After the End, Book 5, Convergence. So we are back from a major cliffhanger. If you watched my last video about the previous book, books 3 and 4, you know that I thought that as the books went on, the author's quality gotten a lot better. How he handled the tone, some of the side characters, some of the extra POVs. And I feel like this book capitalized on a lot of the things that I thought were criticisms in the last series, took what was good and just ran with it. Coming into this book, you know, he really took that grim, dark tone and ran with it, making it a bit more
grimdark.
And I think this book came full circle in a lot of ways. So some of the things that I didn't like about the last book, coming to this one, or what originally attracted to me this series, he went back to those roots. But this time he did it with much more skill and experience under his belt, and it really showed. I think there's just a massive uptick in quality. Today I'm going to give you guys some general thoughts on this book, how I think TurtleMe has come a long way since the beginning of the series, and we're going to dive into some specific spoilery things, just because I wanted to talk about some of the things I found amusing, some of the things I thought were cool, and just dive into some specific things about this book that I liked. We're back to the original progression fantasy basics where, you know, we're seeing Arthur as main character level up, we're seeing how like the world and magic systems intertwine, and we're getting back to that satisfaction of watching a character go through these super cool training sequences and preparing for an actual threat. Up until this point, I feel like, you know, we just kind of were meandering through Arthur getting stronger, and there wasn't really a definite reason yet for him to need that strength other than to protect his friends and family. But with the war upcoming and the fact that, you know, things are finally happening and there's a bunch of powers trying to combat for control of Dicathin, we finally have some stakes. And what's great is that we're finally revisiting what attracted me to the series, and what I think a lot of people got into this series for was the progression fantasy element of this, where we're watching a main character get stronger and stronger and stronger. And this book set it up in such a way where I don't think that TurtleMe necessarily had the skill to do in the original, or some of the choices that he made this much harder to do, but we're finally where like Arthur has to get stronger, because if he doesn't, you know, his loved ones now are actual risk, and there are, you know, plot consequences for him not trying to raise to certain levels. And one of the downfalls of having a character that was super competent from the get-go, where he already knew a lot, was more experienced, was it was hard to find him like a good mentor, or, you know, who does he actually learn from that can give him the skills he needs to improve. And instead, in the previous books, you had him just figuring it out and being like a genius, connecting all these things from his previous world. But we're finally in a situation where there are people now that are much stronger than Arthur, where he is no longer at the very tip or the top of the power level. So seeing him go from being a giant fish in a smaller pond to being like a medium-sized fish in the ocean, it's really cool. And you're finally having it where you're like, oh, he actually can go up to this place now, because before he was, you know, while underleveled, or, you know, underleveled compared to some of the other characters, there was always that, you know, thing in the back of his head where it's like, oh, well, he's underleveled, but he could definitely take on this character or this and that. We are now at the point where that is no longer the case, and there are multiple characters walking around that could absolutely just smash Arthur, and now we have room to grow and see what's going to happen. A lot of this works for me because of how much better TurtleMe became as a writer. Some of the criticisms I had before, I still think they're valid, if I probably shouldn't have dwelled so long on them, was how he handled side characters and different point of views. And in this book, when we finally got back to using those kind of plot devices or writing devices, is we're seeing what happens when you use them good. You know, each POV that we got into expanded the world a little bit. It set the stakes. You know, we're seeing all these major power players come together in a giant convergence of war, and suddenly we're experiencing it through someone who's not overpowered, or it's not the main character. So there's real stakes, and you can feel like the fear and the anxiety that's happening. And these are things that, you know, 2 books ago, I don't think he would have been able to pull off, but he was able to do it with this book. Not to mention with the change in tone and going into more grimdark, setting up a war thing, diving into what is epic fantasy, is that getting into deeper topics. I won't spoil anything in this section, but later on, some of the things that he drops or the revelations that come out are, you know, really big and important, and actually having to navigate through them takes it out of a, oh, we're just gonna get stronger and I'm just gonna decimate everyone, to like, oh, that's getting a little dark. But all in all, it was just a massive improvement, and I really enjoyed how far the series has come. I wanted to get into some spoilers, talk about some specific things that happened in the book, so if you decided to check out a review on a book you haven't read, then now's your warning to, leave, come back, check it out later if you really want to hear what I say. But if not, let's go talk about some stuff. So there are quite a few running gags that are happening in this series now, but I think my favorite one so far has to be with how they're handling, the sexual attractiveness of dwarf women. Imagine my surprise when, early on to this book, the very first sex scene that is written in the series, despite, having Arthur being constantly viewed as attractive and all these other characters, was just out of the blue. We started writing erotica about, the dwarf king and queen deciding to get it on. And it was so absurd when it started happening, and I was just horrified to see how far it was going to be taken. And you're in the dwarf king's head during the POV as he's just mesmerized over his lady's strong buff arms and just general hairiness. It really caught me off guard, and I found it completely absurd and hilarious, and it was just a cool transition. It's not a major plot point, but I wanted to mention just the fact that he actually went there. On a deeper topic, I actually enjoyed that they finally did decide to delve into the psychology of Arthur's alternate ego, or his previous life. They went and finally decided to reveal now is a good time to let Arthur know about his parents, that he was actually King Grey in his former life. I wish they had done a bit more with that, just because by the end, it just gets resolved. These memories in your head don't change the fact that you are a son, but it was a nice emotional touch. I think it could have been expanded out a bit more, but overall, I thought it was still done well. And it was exciting to see that we're actually starting to dive into some of these topics that are a bit more psychologically heavy and deeper, and we're creating more and more emotional conflict and character growth for Arthur to go through. Same with that, we're now seeing Arthur getting a level of power where it is starting to affect his character. His interactions with more and more of the lower soldiers, or people still viewing him as a teenager, where rather than handling it with grace and maturity, you're seeing him instead just flex his power a few times, and you're seeing that met with disapproval by some of the people stronger than him. So we're setting up that Arthur isn't this perfect, always composed person anymore, and there's probably going to be some character growth that we're going to have for him later in the series, which is exciting because perfect characters are boring. And I mentioned this vaguely earlier, but having Arthur actually train with the asura I thought were a good touch. Before, with all his teachers, maybe they provided, some little bits of knowledge for him to piece together, but now we're in a situation where we have this ancient dragon race where everyone there is ancient in comparison to any human, and they're the ones who are teaching Arthur how to do new fighting and new magic. So Arthur is very much not even the strongest character among any of them. They had him battling against children in these kind of elaborate training sequences, and it took Arthur a while to even be able to fight the children. So it's cool to see that disparity in the skill and actually having people that, Arthur can learn from and not feel like he's just figuring everything out. So I thought that was a super nice touch. The training sequences too, that's what I like about progression fantasy, is you're going through these elaborate things to get stronger, and you're seeing that strength go and go and go as you get those small little victories. Here's a task that you have no idea what to do, and then you watch the main character slowly gain power and slowly figure it out, and you get that sense of accomplishment when he actually starts to succeed and accomplish. So what I like about progression fantasy, there was a plethora of in this book. The main things, though, I thought that really showcased how much better the writing was in this book than previously is we did go back into progression fantasy, into the basics, which I found enjoyable in the book one. But now we're bringing back things that I thought were weaker in the previous books, like having differing point of views. We're getting into the head of some of the side characters. Every side character that was in this book, I felt deserved to be there. They're all part of the plot, they're adding to it, and they're going to be part of it continuing forward. So they were all valuable additions to it, rather than just throw-offs to only do one thing, which was show off Arthur's skill and how cool he is. Getting into characters like Tess's head, I found Tess kind of annoying in the last books 3 and 4, and I don't know if she added a lot, But now that TurtleMe is getting better at like actually writing, you're seeing her be her own character with agency, and that's exciting. You know, she has a personality outside of Arthur now, and you know, you have her own type of character-driven growth. Her grandfather is running the war effort, and she wants to be a part of it and doesn't want to be sheltered away, and she's desperately trying to get off to the front lines and participate. Yet she doesn't have that same level of power that Arthur does, or that same experience and everything that would let her go off and be in these war and adventure things. And they don't want her to go out there, but now she has to struggle against, like, you know, what her family wants versus what her duty is. And all in all, I just thought it was done very well, and especially coming off the last books, you know, this was just such a big improvement for me. And lastly, it was just cool to see, you know, all the new powers and stuff that Arthur got on. You know, there was some foreshadowing, some special powers that he will get with, like, you know, Burst Step, having him be, like, part of the whole dragon thing. They'll figure out a way to get to a level where he can actually use that extra power that he has found. And, you know, just, we didn't get to see him go all out. We got some hints of just how strong he was, but based off how RP was before to now, we saw little glimpses of just how much stronger he is. But now that we're actually about to go full on into a war, I am super excited to see just what it looks like when he does go all out, especially against enemies like the Vitra, which, you know, are also an ancient, like, race of crazy strong people. What's it going to look like when Arthur actually has, like, strong enemies to go against? And also just put gas to the pedal and just go all out with his powers. But to wrap things up, I think the series is getting a lot better, and I'm very excited to go into the next book. TurtleMe has been growing as a writer, and I think he's starting to get to that point where he's come into his own enough where it's only up from here. And just now that we're actually in the war, we have Arthur going through all these power-ups and everything. I think it's going to be a really fun read, and I'm super excited to go and review it with you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I'm trying to make these a little more engaging and get a little bit better as a YouTuber, so depending on the effort after filming this, hopefully there's better editing in this one, and still trying to figure out the whole YouTuber craft thing, but it's a process. As a heads up, I'm trying to get a backlog going the weekend that I am recording this. I'm going to be doing a lot of traveling for the upcoming holidays, so there's going to be some weekends where I'm not going to have that last minute rush to just like crank out a video in a single day. So this weekend I'm going to try to get everything scheduled out ahead of time, and hopefully I can get enough short sketches out that there'll be at least some stuff to check out for the next few weeks. But you know, if not and I just disappear, then sorry. But hey, thank you guys for your time. I appreciate you swinging by and watching my content. So as always, take it easy.